So Moana 2 was forgettable. The plot was unengaging, the characters were boring, the music was mediocre, but it still made a splash at the box office, so I think that just proves more than anything that capitalism is the wrong system for the film industry to be run under. Whoops, did I say that out loud? Anyway, since I have been known to tear apart a Disney soundtrack in my day, I thought I'd illustrate this movie's flaws by talking about one of the songs and comparing it to its much better counterpart in the first movie. So if you haven't seen it, I'd say the movie pretty much follows the run-of-the-mill Disney sequel formula of let's do this one more time but worse. You honestly might as well just sit home and watch Moana the first. It's better, it'll tug at your heartstrings more, it's a lot funnier, honestly. But just in case you're dying to see the sequel, there will be spoilers starting now. So before we dive in, get it? Let's start with a tiny recap of the plot. The movie begins with Moana discovering evidence of humans on a deserted island. She sails back to Motunui where we get caught up with what the village is doing with the song We're Back. Crazy to start your sequel with a song titled We're Back, but whatever, you do you. So from looking up some old tales, they find out about an ancient island called Motufetu, which connected all the currents in the sea so that people on different islands could interact with each other. Pretty sure that's not how sea currents work, but what do I know? I'm not a freaking oceanologist, I don't even know. But a storm god called Nalo has pulled Motufetu into the sea in order to cause the extinction of all humans, which will happen because unclear whether he plans to attack them or just thinks they'll eventually die out due to inbreeding. We don't know, don't worry about it. So Moana has to set off on a journey to find Motufetu and break Nalo's curse by having a human touch its soil, and she sings arguably the catchiest song in the movie about how she doesn't want to leave Motunui, but obviously she does anyway because we wouldn't have a movie. Oh yeah, and she brings a couple of friends too. Who are they? They're boring. One guy is a diehard Maui stan and this girl likes to destroy things. That's pretty much it. Moana sings What Could Be Better Than This to try to motivate them, and we get no info on their characters beyond what was communicated to us in their first 2 lines each. You could say their characters were pretty shallow. So after leaving, they pretty much immediately get captured by these lovable little coconut buddies from the first movie, who it turns out are actually super nice and want to help them. But then a giant clam comes to eat them, and now they're in the monster dimension again. Whoops, I'm sorry, I mean the clam's insides, totally different things. There they find Maui, who has been captured by a bat goddess named Matangi. Something like that. When Moana tries to confront her, she loses horribly. Maui sacrifices his hook, and the humans have to use their ingenuity to take out her bat henchmen, and never mind, just kidding. She's actually super nice and wants to help them too. So Matangi sends all of them into Nalo's waters, where they are attacked by sea monsters and lose their boat. Moana has her side girl era washed up on an island, and Maui encourages her with a song called Can I Create the Biggest Cringe Fest Since the Scuttlebutt? And that's the end. Oh, no, sorry, wait. That's actually just the last song in the movie. Basically, they make a plan, fight Nalo, don't quite win the first time, lose Maui's powers the second time, and at that point, Moana just says, screw it, and swims to the sunken peak of the island, where she touches it, erasing Nalo and breaking the curse just at the moment where she's struck by Nalo's lightning. And I'm really surprised to say it. I usually hate resurrections as a rule, but I actually don't hate the resurrection at the end of this movie. I know it seems weird, but it doesn't feel as cheap to me just because Moana becoming a goddess, which is what I assume happened, actually kind of fits with her character and leaves a lasting consequence to this death. It's kind of like Moana's mortal form actually did die, and now she's become something else entirely. Is she just gonna stop aging now? Like is she just stuck in this godly stasis till the end of time? How is this gonna affect her family relationships? What is her sister gonna think about that? You know what? More pieces of media should kill off their characters and then turn them into ageless deities so they can still have interesting gray relational subplots and their arc doesn't just end there. And honestly, Goddess Moana is such an icon. Wield that ore, queen. The movie does end with a tiny reprise of Beyond, but in terms of official full-length songs, they ended on the Cringe Fest, which too bad for them, I guess. So my main issue with the songs in this movie was, first of all, they're pretty boring. Definitely not Wish levels of bad, thankfully, but I could barely remember them after watching the first time, and they're surely not gonna show up on my playlists anytime soon. But on a second look, nothing much changed. I pretty much just found out how useless they are and how this movie didn't actually need them at all for its narrative to stand on 2 legs. When you're writing a musical, I think the first thing you want to ask yourself is, how did these songs advance the characters' arcs or the plot? How are we revealing new information through this song, or illustrating character change, or just doing something important to justify its, the time it's taking up in the narrative? And these songs, I think they tried to do this, but some of them, particularly Beyond and What Could Be Better Than This, totally flopped in the necessary for the plot department. But you'll have to take my word for it for those ones, because I actually wanted to talk about a different song whose issues I feel are the clearest when compared to its first movie counterpart. Let's see if you can guess which song it is. I'll give you a hint. It's sung to Moana in the climax of a side quest into a realm of weird monsters and unnatural colors by a random, somewhat scary, creepy Maui rival who has animal-related powers and appears briefly to then disappear and never come back for the rest of the film. If you guessed Shiny, you're correct! Hold on, wait. I'm getting word that that's actually not in this movie. That one's from the first one. Okay, scratch that, guys. It's actually a song called Get Lost. Guess we're analyzing it now. So of the two songs that fit that description, one is a brilliant and intriguing addition to an overall pretty good movie. The other is just a watered down version of it. Watered down, yeah. I promise that was my last pun. But what did Get Lost do wrong, you say? I am so glad you asked. Since this movie reuses pretty much every joke from the previous movie, just less funny, I'm gonna assume it basically wants to be the first movie and compare this song beat for beat to Shiny. If you just look at them on a surface level, okay, that was my last pun, I swear. You might think that Shiny has about the same bearing on Moana's plot as Get Lost did on the sequel, since, of course, as we all know, Chee never came back in the rest of the movie. And, I mean, we were all wondering where he went. Like, what could have happened to him? Did he get transported to another dimension somehow, where he showed up on YouTube and almost gained 2 million subscribers? I mean, that would be weird. But to that, I say the point of Shiny was not to set up Sparkly Rich Crab as a character. It was actually just to play on the themes that Moana and Maui were learning throughout the course of the movie. Pretty early on in the song, Tamatoa brings out Moana's grandmother. Did your granny say listen to your heart, be who you are on the inside? Well, I need 3 words to tear her argument apart. Your granny lied. The sass is off the charts. He outright dismisses the things she taught Moana by claiming he'd rather be shiny and beautiful than whoever he is on the inside. He just shows this callousness towards the heavy emotional message that we've gotten from Moana's grandmother that was very important to her. It's a little bit comedic, but at the same time, it gives you a little chill. It makes the song that much more fun. Tamatoa is the clearest anti-theme in Moana. Over the course of the movie, each character has to learn to define themselves from within themselves. Moana's most triumphant character moment is the moment when she finds herself again and realizes she has the strength to deliver the heart of Te Fiti herself. The most powerful line she sings is just her declaring her own name. And Maui has a very nice parallel arc where he learns that it isn't his hook or his powers that make him him. It's his own prerogative to define himself from within. So clearly, though Shiny may seem out of left field on first watch, it's creating a very compelling foil to Maui and Moana. I love character foils. They're so delightful. What it would look like if either of them continued down the path of defining themselves based on outward validation or their appearance. And since he's so delightfully creepy, it really gets the viewer invested in whether or not they can realize that. The theme is important to us. So with this being the function of Shiny and Moana's narrative, you'd think that since Moana 2 is just a shallow repeat of movie 1, it would follow the same formula with Get Lost. But actually, you would be right. It's just nowhere near as good, of course. Get Lost is not here to introduce us to Matangi's character, but to teach us something about the theme. In this case, Matangi is not the anti-theme and is not creating an interesting foil for any of our characters. Instead, she's just straight up telling us what's what, trying to teach Moana what the theme supposedly is. Even if that theme were perfectly woven into the movie, that angle would just be fundamentally less interesting than the angle Shiny takes. A song from the perspective of the villain singing about why the characters shouldn't follow the theme, along with disturbing threats to eat them every few lines? Girl, sign me up already. It gives us a reason to root for the main characters and lets us look deeper than just listening to the lyrics. We have to pick up on the subtext to understand what the main characters should really be doing in the narrative, which is infinitely more cool and fun than being told exactly what to do by a bat lady. However hot that bat lady is. And you know what? I realized as I was writing this that that's a very common theme in Moana 1. A majority of the songs actually start with the characters telling themselves and each other not to follow the theme. And it is Moana's strength that allows her to finally break free from that at the end. And that's what makes it so powerful. Where You Are is basically just the entire village telling Moana not to listen to the voice inside and that her destiny is to lead Motunui. And How Far I'll Go begins with Moana herself trying to suppress who she is inside for the sake of the village. I can lead with pride. I can make us strong. I'll be satisfied if I play along. Youre Welcome is less clearly in this pattern, but it's still a glimpse at Maui's character before he learns to value who he is inside. It shows us how deeply ingrained it is in him to seek validation from other people. All of these songs are telling us one thing and showing us another. Moana should stay and lead the village, but she wants to go explore uncharted seas. Maui is great because he does all these amazing things for other people, but what he really needs is to find genuine connection and learn to love himself. And Shiny is the same. It's telling us that to be shiny is cool and being yourself is lame, but it's showing us that Tamatoa is a scary monster and our characters don't want to be anything like him. So what is Get Lost doing wrong in this department? It's not leaving us any subtext. It's not giving us any conflicting messages, and that means it's infinitely less interesting. It's flat because it says exactly what it means. And now that I think of it, so do all the others. Where You Are had 2 simultaneous functions. It was a colorful, fun introduction to the setting and village life, and it also gave us this complex messaging about following who you are inside. It set up the theme. Whereas We're Back only does one of those things, so it's a lot less interesting to watch. It's basically just a song about how happy everyone is to be voyaging again, and it doesn't really give us any internal conflict, any character versus other character, any character versus self, any character versus nature. We have pretty much nothing to grab onto in terms of storytelling and theme. Nothing to get hooked on. You could say that Beyond has a kind of internal conflict, but it too is much shallower than How Far I'll Go because all Moana sings is exactly what she's feeling. She outright tells us everything about where she is at this point in her arc, and we don't get to deduce anything about how she feels or who she is from how she's acting like we do with How Far I'll Go. When she denies her own inner voice in How Far I'll Go, we can tell she's only doing it out of a desire to fulfill her duty, but she feels unsatisfied with that. She wants more out of her life, and she communicates that in a much more complex way than just saying, I want to leave, but I'm not allowed to go. Beyond is basically just Moana saying, I have to leave, but I don't want to, over and over again in slightly more dramatic ways. As I said before, Get Lost is inherently less interesting because of this flaw, but even if Matangi were a cool, interesting, scary villain who was the perfect anti-theme to taking risks and thinking outside the box, this song would still not be as powerful because the theme of taking risks and thinking outside the box is not infused very well in the rest of the movie. Moana actually has to say, we switch it up, and there's always another way, like multiple times during the final battle, just to let us know that this is supposed to be her following up on this theme. In Moana 1, Moana realizing who she was inside and thereby learning the theme was the catalyst that encouraged her at her lowest point. And it also was the catalyst that encouraged Maui at his lowest point. And that's what made that moment so emotional and powerful, because it was the moment of change for her character. Whereas in Moana 2, she gets pulled back from her lowest point by basically just listening to, it's about drive, it's about power, we stay hungry, we devour. The only evidence of this theme being set up in the beginning was, I guess, Moana singing about how she didn't want to leave Motunui and risk never coming back. But as I wrote in my notes at the time, that threat didn't feel real to me. They gave us no good reason to believe that this fight would be significantly harder than the last one. It seemed to me honestly like it was a vague worry that Moana was blowing way out of proportion, and we didn't get any actions from her that showed us that she was risk averse now, and that was her problem that she needed to solve in the rest of the movie. It would have been great if we had gotten to see Moana trying to protect her little sister by discouraging her from sailing or taking any kinds of risks. And if that had been a prominent part of the setup, then maybe I could believe that the main message they wanted to send in this movie was to take risks and think outside the box. But I don't buy it. It just wasn't there. And if this really was the core theme, then Moana shouldn't have learned it from Matangi halfway through the story anyway. It should have been a last-ditch thing she was forced to accept in the moments before finally being able to take down the main villain. I mean, it's just a fundamental misunderstanding of how a story works. Okay, so Get Lost doesn't work in the wider context of the story, and it's less interesting because it has a lot less subtext than Shiny, but at least it makes thematic sense in its immediate context, and like at least it helps her escape the clam, right? Well, I gotta be honest, I really hesitate to agree with that either. There wasn't any setup that said the only way to escape the clam was to think outside the box. We really didn't get a chance to see anybody even attempt to escape the clam. And it does make me wonder if this had been made into a show like it was originally intended, if this would have been a clearer theme, if we would have gotten more time to explore the clam. But as it stands, there was no indication of how the group was supposed to escape, either by risk-taking or through any other method whatsoever. So this song doesn't even work in that context. And my final note is I wanted to point out that not only is Shiny important to the theme of the first Moana, it actually did have a significant impact on the plot. It forced Maui to open up to Moana about his past. When Tamatoa brought up the ones who abandoned Maui, I literally remember sitting in that theater and just feeling my jaw drop because it was so chilling. Tamatoa became very intimidating because he broke down Maui's rock-solid barriers. Because he's Dwayne the Rock. I'll shut up. He forced a very defensive and walled-off character to open up and be vulnerable to Moana for the first time. And that created a lot of depth in Maui's character, and in turn, it led to them bonding over wayfinding, and overall, it pushes both of their character arcs along super organically. And of course, Get Lost didn't do anything half as interesting as that, so if it was trying to copy Shiny's success, it failed in several different departments. You know, it actually makes me really sad that this song was such a miss, because I do really think some of these concepts could have been very interesting if they were used correctly in a Moana sequel. Bringing in new gods and demigoddesses was an obvious and interesting choice for a Moana sequel, and of course people were intrigued when they saw her in the trailers, for good reason. She has a super cool design, and we were all waiting for another classic Disney villain. But even if she could never have been a villain, her line about true wayfinders never knowing the way at all, that was pure fire, because it opened opens up a whole new perspective on what Moana learned in the first movie, which was wayfinding. Maybe there could have been ideological conflicts between Matangi and Maui because of how Maui taught Moana to wayfind and never told her this seemingly crucial aspect of it. If we had gotten a better setup and a better ultimate obstacle that highlighted the need to think outside the box more, I do think this could have been a great theme to build on the things we learned in the first movie. But unfortunately, that did not happen, and now here we are with another mediocre sequel and batch of lukewarm, villainless Disney songs. It really feels like holding on to hope for Disney at this point is just foolish. But goodness knows I'm gonna be here making analyses of these till you guys stop liking them. So if you enjoyed this content, hit like, subscribe, drop me a comment. I'm just kidding. I really enjoy making these videos. Analyzing movies is one of my favorite things to do, and I never dreamed I could have been getting paid for it. So thank you so much for making that possible. If you want to support me making even more of them, you can look at my memberships or my Patreon, but if not, literally, I still love you and I forgive you. Don't even worry about it. I want to know what you rated Moana 2. Give me a score out of 10 and tell me why in the comments. I guess we're waiting for Elio to restore our faith in Disney once again, folks. Maybe this will be the day. Who knows? I'd like to dedicate this outro to someone. AJ Mack, our resident channel member, from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. And with that, I take my leave. Bye!